me a lot, why did I do this? After I'm done assuring them it's because I'm not crazy, it's because I believe in something. I believe in this community. I believe in this country. I believe in us. I think we're facing extraordinary crises right now. We're facing a climate crisis that is becoming inignorable. We're facing an inequality crisis, and it was a crisis before COVID-19. We are facing an affordability and housing crisis that is out of control. The truth is, after 50 years of constant slashes to public services in order to cut taxes for the wealthy, we've let people down. Canadians deserve a new deal, which represents working people. We deserve to have a wealth system, a wealth tax, which reflects that the burden of responsibility for paying taxes should not be on the lowest income Canadians. We deserve access to affordable housing. We deserve universal pharmacare. Our seniors should not be products for a for-profit long-term care system, which is cutting support for them at increasingly unaffordable prices for working families. Working families shouldn't have to choose if they can give their children child care and if they can give their parents the care and dignity they need. Those are our human rights. We need a new deal that works with our Indigenous friends to create actual new climate structures and new jobs that will save the environment. We're often told we have to choose between the environment and our economic future. We don't. We owe it to our children and our children's children to give them both. And we can, if we come together, if we make the wealthiest finally pay their fair share and we do our job. Thank you. In the national debate, Jagmeet Singh said that this was a selfie election for Mr. Trudeau, and I think it is. The reality is, as my colleague indicated, the Liberals have worked to support Canadians, but it's because of NDP pressure. The CERB program that was put into place was because of NDP pressure. $2,000 a month, 75% wage subsidy, that was us. And the reality is, by working with the NDP, the Liberals could continue to fight COVID and maintain this country without risking an election during a global pandemic. This is about gaining a majority government. I think it's wrong. I think it was a foolish thing to do. I think it was an egotistical thing to do. And I don't think we should be doing this. But since we are here, let us take this moment to see how we can turn this crisis into an opportunity. And we can, if we work together and if we bring about a Green New Deal and if we focus back on putting money back into the community. Let's use this election as a chance to make our voices heard. So the NDP has been consistently and strongly in favor of a universal childcare program at $10 a day. And like the Liberals, we agree that this needs to come with not only hiring more ECEs, but where we go a step further is we want to increase their pay significantly. ECEs are professional workers. I used to be an ECE myself. I used to work with ECEs. I know how hard these people work. They are understaffed and they are underpaid. Now, the tax credit suggested by the Conservatives simply isn't going to work because it is essentially paying back for people money that they have to spend upfront on childcare. This is like a bank lending you money when you're no longer in debt. They have to have the money up front to pay for the child care. They can't wait till tax season to get that back. So the program simply won't work. I would love to work with the Liberals to make this happen, just like I would have loved for them to have done so in 1993, and so I might have enjoyed it myself. The fact is, it's been promised every election, and it hasn't happened despite NDP working to achieve that. We can do it and make ECE's lives better and better paid for and give kids the chance to experience child care. Thank you. My Liberal and Conservative colleagues spoken about building houses, but what they haven't spoken about is affordable houses. The Liberals are opposing a $1 billion subsidy to build more houses. We propose $14 billion. Our purpose is to build 500,000 affordable homes within the next 10 years, half of which will be in the next 5. This is the key difference. We are not building this for wealthy Canadians. We are not building these for higher income Canadians. These are for low income Canadians. These are to give Canadians, through co-op rental opportunities, an eco-friendly opportunity to be able to rent at a reasonable rate. This will force speculative landlords to drive down their rental costs to compete with this superior option. And in doing so, we can force this ridiculous spiral downward. To close, I would like to mention that it was the Liberals that pulled out funding for building homes in the 1990s under Paul Martin, and the Conservatives failed to pick it up. We applaud them for coming back on the right side of this issue, but only the NDP has been advocating for it.
Thank you.
There's a lot to talk about here, so I'll do my best to say it all. First off, I want to talk about the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. The reality is this has finally been recognized by Canada thanks to pressure by the NDP. And what it means is we need to start bringing Indigenous communities into the discussions on how to combat climate change. Indigenous people live for millennia in perfect harmony with nature. We need to work with them and learn from them. And we need to give them the power to have a voice when our decisions like the Trans Mountain Pipeline are going to significantly impact their lives. We also want a Green New Deal. 300,000 new jobs to start, high-paying jobs in the green, white, and blue-collar sectors to reduce our emissions to 0% electrical production emissions by 2040, reduce them by 50% overall carbon emissions by 2030. This starts with ending the hundreds of billion-dollar subsidies the Liberals send every year to oil and gas and putting it towards green R&D. We believe that a universal income, basic income, is critical, but that cannot come before critical labor reform. There are a number of labor shortages in our counties, and it's not just recent. We have been suffering a brain drain for years. Our Green New Deal will bring people back who have had to leave our counties to use their professional accreditations. We need engineers, we need scientists, we need high skills majors. We need all of these people to build zero emission green energy production here. We can save the environment and bring young skilled workers back to our counties. We also need to talk minimum wage. Anything less than $18 right now in Bruce Grey is simply not enough to live. That's why we support an immediate $15 and soon to $20 federal minimum wage. We also support cost of living adjustment, which will bring that immediate amount up further. It is simply not responsible to set a minimum wage without adjusting for inflation, which is why we want COLA. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, I would like to say that, speaking of the Ontario curriculum, I'm happy to say residential schools are in the curriculum. And I should know, I've taught it. And that's the way it ought to be. But I think we need to go further than just educating. That's the first step, not the last. Healing is going to be a multiple generations process. And it begins with recognizing the human rights of Indigenous peoples. The reality is the Human Rights Commission of Canada has determined that non-Indigenous children are receiving significantly more funding for every single issue of need. Yet it is the Indigenous children of this country who have suffered the intergenerational trauma of the residential schools. And the Liberal government has fought them in court to prevent paying equal amounts of money for Indigenous children. This discrimination must stop. Going further, we need to recognize that the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which I'm proud to say my party pushed the Liberals to recognize, that means that First Nations need to have the right to give their consent before projects in their communities, such as the TC Energy Program, as the Nawash and Saugeen have turned down here. We need to give them that right. It is their right. Thank you for bringing this up. It actually relates directly to my previous response. I think this is a perfect opportunity to enforce the United Nations Declaration. I think realistically, this will have a significant impact on the sovereign territory of the Nawash Saugeen. And the Nawash and Saugeen nations should have the right to say whether or not they approve of this. We have a terrible habit in this country of forcing potentially dangerous environmental construction on Indigenous territory. The Trans Mountain Pipeline is a perfect example of this. So my position is fairly straightforward. If the Nawash and the Saugeen nations give their informed consent to proceed, then we can discuss the environmental pros and cons. If they do not give their consent, to me that ends the conversation. I would not support it in that case. It is time for us to stop colonizing the territory of these people. Thank you. First and foremost, the first thing the NDP wants to do is to continue the programs that we have put into place. This includes the CERB program to keep Canadians afloat. This also includes the 75% wage subsidy. This includes rental supports for small businesses. But it goes a lot further than that. If you really want to break down our policy, everything has to do with helping small business. The reality is, in this system, the economy only flows if people have money in their pockets. Putting more money in people's pockets means they can spend more at small businesses, allowing those businesses to expand. This, in turn, allows them to generate more revenue. This is how the government invests money in people to increase revenue. So when we talk about taxing the wealthy and using that to pay for long-term care, we talk about creating over 1 million high-paying jobs in the industrial sector to make Canada self-reliant again. When we talk about bringing over 300,000 green energy jobs, what we're talking about is giving people good economic opportunities, putting money in their pockets, and putting that in the pocket of small business. We got you through the pandemic, and now we're going to give you a customer base.
Thank you.
Our response to this boils down to the question, who's going to pay for it? You've heard a lot of policy proposals today, all of which will cost money, and yet, while my party has always asked the question, who's going to pay for it, we're the only ones with an answer. The wealthy are going to. Taxes have never been this low for the wealthy. We want to reverse the horrible tax cuts that have been given to the wealthiest Canadians at the expense of working Canadians. In May of this year, a wealth tax proposal supported by 82% of Canadians was presented to the floor. And every party, except the NDP, and of course my friends in the Green Party, voted against it. This was outrageous. Right now, we are paying the majority of taxes. We are losing hundreds of billions to tax havens, to loopholes, to systems designed to be unfair. So we know how we're going to pay for it, by taking that money from the wealthy and investing it in communities. For every $1 that the government spends on communities, we get 3 back. It's time for them to pay their fair share. How are you guys going to pay for it without taxing the rich?
Thank you. Ms. Fosbrook.
You ever try going to work without wearing your pants? We already have things we can and cannot do for the public safety of others. In my case, not wearing pants is considered for me technically a weapon. We have to have licenses to drive. And you can't drive when you're drunk, no matter how thirsty you were beforehand. We're facing a global pandemic. The last one of this nature killed 50 million people. The United States has experimented with taking no serious action to prevent its spread, and very soon their death rate will surpass their civil war. We are not in a position to put people's lives at risks. I understand people have concerns about the vaccines. I understand that some folks don't want to get it, but the reality is they cannot be put in positions where they could harm others and allow it to spread further. Yes, it is a difficult situation. Emergencies call for serious, decisive action. I am in favor of the passport, not because I like the idea, but because I think it is necessary to save lives. This is a complex issue. I am a target shooter. I'm a proud member of the target shooting community. And our policy, the NDP, is that we are concerned about illegal firearms coming over the border. We share a border with one of the most reckless manufacturers and distributors of firearms in the world. And it is a very easy thing to smuggle those guns into Canada and sell them illegally. And that is where the RCMP have estimated 50 to 75% of all firearms in any kind of criminal activity, from self-harm to violence. That's where they're coming from. And the NDP wants to strengthen our borders to prevent those arms from getting into this country. We also want to get guns off the streets by giving young people an opportunity to avoid the criminal lifestyle. Like I've been saying over and over, we have let this generation down. We need subsidies to give them opportunities to explore high skills majors, to explore other opportunities outside of criminality, to have early intervention programs in poor communities. That's how we tackle the issue. No more illegal guns.
Thank you.
I want to take with the capital gains tax. First, I want to focus on new buyers. We want to lower the taxes on new home buyers, first-time home buyers, to actually give the 75% of millennials who see owning a house as a pipe dream and the 40% that have just outright given up on it entirely a chance to actually buy homes. We also want to increase capital gains for foreign speculation. One of the reasons that homes are rapidly increasing in prices so much is because foreign speculation is buying them well above housing market and then using them to jack up the rent. So you have 2 problems at one. It's driving up the cost of houses, and it's also driving up the cost of rent. We want to force these people out. Our party, starting with 20%, I say let's go higher. And as a member of caucus, I intend to push that significantly higher than 20%. But it's a good point to start on. Finally, I want to point out that when it comes to capital gains, one of the problems with our taxation system is capital gains is taxed far less than income. And what this results in is more of these loopholes made by the other parties, and we want to close it. Capital, same as income.
Thank you.
There's a lot of proposals we have, but it all starts with not-for-profit long-term care. We cannot help seniors in our community if we are looking at them as systems of profit. This has to end. Long-term care needs to be universal, not-for-profit. And this isn't just long-term care. This is home care as well. Not all seniors need to be in long-term care facilities, and they have the right to live their last years with dignity in their homes if possible. And we have no subsidies for home care. We need home care and long-term to be not-for-profit. We also want to expand accessibility to social support programs, to income support programs for seniors with the goal of bringing UBI. Our goal is to make it so that everyone can access it, and we're going to do it soon, especially if I'm in caucus. Universal pharmacare and dental care are part of this as well. But we also want to increase CPP and GIS should not be a way for the government to claw back taxes like CERB. People are already struggling enough. That's what we want to do.
Thank you.
Folks, we're facing a lot of crises. A climate crisis, affordable housing crisis, rampant inequality. And these crises existed far before COVID-19. They've simply exposed them. But where people see crisis, I see opportunity. I see the chance to revitalize our economy with 1 million new high-paying jobs, to bring manufacturing back to Canada by investing subsidies in manufacturing, to invest in our agricultural production to make it green, to make it safe, to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs in green energy production to not only save the environment, but to save our economy. I believe that if we invest in people, that is how we secure our economic future, our economic stability, all of it. But I believe it begins with investing in people, not in the wealthy. 82% of Canadians called for a wealth tax, and the parties joined hands against it. The point was made before that this election was to ask Canadians what they think. What we think is that the wealthy should be paying their fair share, that we should be investing in small communities, and that we should bring this money back to Canadians. Universal pharmacare, universal health care, universal child care, universal long-term care, equality, fairness in the taxation system, and an economic and environmental future for our children. We can do it if we come together and we make our voices heard. Vote Christopher Neudorf in this election for the New Democratic Party. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence.